Have you ever asked who you were before you were born into this world? Before you had a name? Before you had a body? Even before you see this world for the first time? What exactly you are? In the spiritual teachings of Islam, there is a big secret that is rarely discussed. That before humans born into the world, our spirit has been before God. There was even a deal that happened. The covenant between God and the spirit of man. Then the question is now, why we don't remember them. And even more surprising, some people say that the human heart actually still retains that memory. In this video, we're going to discuss the secret of Makrifat's hidden. Who you were before you were born into the world. A spiritual secret that might change the way you look at life forever. The spirit as covenant with God in the afterlife. In the spiritual teachings of Islam, there is a big secret about the origins of humans, which is often referred to by the scholars as the covenant of the spirit in the realm of Azrael. Before humans born into the world, before a body forms in the womb, and even before the life of this world began. The human spirit, it was created by God. At that time, the entire human spirit collected by God in a natural, known as the nature of the spirit, or the natural world. In the Quran, it is mentioned that at the time, God took testimony of all the spirit of man. God asked to them with a very profound question. Am I not your God? And all the spirit of man answered with the same voice, yes, you are our God. This event is often referred to by the scholars of Sufism as an agreement. Primordial is the first covenant between humans, God before man, born into the world. It was at that moment every human spirit recognizes that God is his God, meaning that before humans living a life in the world, actually the human spirit already have recognition and awareness about the existence of God. But when humans born into the world, the memory of the event no longer stored consciously in the human mind. Life of a world full of various activities, desire, and test often makes humans forgetting the origins of his spirit. However, in the view of the scholars of Sufism, though humans don't remember them consciously, traces of the agreement remain stored in the human heart, the deepest. That's why, often human, feeling something that is difficult to explain by logic. There was a time when the heart suddenly feels longing for God. There are times when the soul feels very calm when remembering God. There was also a time when humans feel that the world, not able to, gives a really gratifying deep in his heart. In a spiritual view, this feeling is often perceived as echoes of the covenant of the spirit that once took place in the afterlife. The human spirit actually have a natural tendency to get back to know his God. But the life of the world often masks that tendency with various busyness and temptation. That's why, on a spiritual journey, the scholars often say that worship, remembrance, and repentance is actually a way to reawaken consciousness of the spirit who once knew God, since before humans were born. On the way to enlightenment, someone not knowing anything completely new. It actually is recalling something his spirit once knew. When the heart gets cleaned through worship and remembrance, someone began to feel a profound closeness to God. It was at that moment as if the heart begins to recall relationship that ever happened between the spirit and his God. awareness of the covenant. The Spirit also reminds people about his purpose in the world. The world is not an eternal abode, but rather a place of temporary travel. Man came into the world with a trust. Live life by remembering God, and fulfill the promise that his Spirit had made before God. Because it's when someone began to feel a strong longing to approach to God, when the heart feels calm when dhikr, or when the soul is at peace during worship. Maybe it's not just a normal feeling. It could be, it is the voice of the Spirit recalling his old covenant with God. A deal that ever happened before humans know the world. A pact hidden in the depths of our souls. Agreement that reminds that, in essence, every human being, have you ever stood before God and acknowledged that he is the God? The human spirit has been created before the body. In the spiritual view of Islam, humans are not just composed of the body visible to the eye, but it also has the spirit. That is the deepest part of human self. It comes from the secrets of God's creation. Human body, formed gradually in the womb of a mother. But the spirit has much deeper origins. Many scholars explain that the human spirit, created by God before the human body, formed in the world. Human body comes from the earth element and developed through biological processes in the womb. The spirit is something different. The spirit is a creation. God is very subtle and full of mystery. Even in the Quran, it is mentioned that when humans ask about the spirit, God explained, the spirit is God's business, and humans was given little knowledge of it. This thing shows the spirit has depth and secrets that human reason cannot fully comprehend. On a spiritual journey, the scholars of Sufism often explain that before humans, born into the world, the human spirit have been in the realm of the spirit, which is a state. The spirit was created by God before entering into the human body. At that level, the human spirit, I have a very close relationship with God, because the spirit comes directly from his will and creation. When humans begins to form within the womb, God then blows the spirit into the body. It was at that moment, man becomes a living being. A body that was previously only a physical form, come alive because of the spirit that moves it. Without the spirit of the human body, it's just a body that has no life. Awareness of the origin of this spirit gives a very deep understanding about reality, human, not just physical beings that live to seek pleasures of the world, but also spiritual beings who have a relationship with God. Human body comes from the earth, but the human spirit have a relationship with the sky. That's why, in life, often human feel something that cannot be explained by the logic of the world alone. There are times when the heart feels empty, though the world gives a lot of fun. There was a time when the soul felt a very deep peace when remembering God. In a spiritual view, it is often regarded as the spirit's longing for the origin, his proposal. The human spirit has natural tendencies, getting closer to God. But the life of the world often makes humans forget the truth. Busyness of desire and various world affairs often makes humans more focused on the body and worldly needs, while the needs of the spirit are often overlooked, because it was on its way to someone trying to clean his heart so that his spirit feels closeness to God again. to worship. Remembrance and repentance, human heart, become more clear, so that the spirit can return to peace that comes from closeness to his God. The spirit existed before the body, also reminded humans that the life of the world is just a temporary journey. Human body, one day it will return to the ground, but the spirit returns to God, who created it. And it is from this understanding someone starts to realize that the nature of himself, not just the body visible to the eye, but also the spirit that comes from the mystery of God. The spirit one day, going back to him, after the journey of life in this world is finished. Why humans forget the origins of his spirit. One of the frequently asked questions on a spiritual journey is, why humans, not remembering the origin of his spirit before his birth into the world? If the human spirit ever been in the realm of the spirit and made a covenant with God, why humans, not remembering the event after being born into the world? In the spiritual view of Islam, forget the origin of the spirit is part of the wisdom and test of life in the world. When humans born into the world, it enters a life which is full of various tests, choices, and responsibilities. God made the world a place for humans to consciously prove his faith, not just based on the memory of time before birth. If humans still vividly remember his spirit life before birth, then the life of the world is no longer the real test. People will live with clear beliefs, without choice or struggle. God closes the memory of man about life before birth, so that humans living the life of the world with awareness and effort to seek the truth. Besides that, when humans are born of the world, he was directly faced with a very dense life, with new experiences. Since childhood, humans began to learn to speak, getting to know the environment, building relationships with others, and facing the wants and needs of the world. All these experiences slowly occupy the human mind to the memory of the true origin of his spirit, become hidden in the depths of the soul. But in the view of the scholars of Sufism, though humans don't remember them consciously, traces of the origin of the spirit are kept in the heart. Human. This is what is often referred to as nature, is a natural human tendency to know and seek God. That's why, often human, feeling something that is difficult to explain by logic alone. There was a time when someone feel the emptiness, though the world gives a lot of fun. There are times when the heart feels very calm, when remembering God. There was also a time when the soul feels a very deep longing to get close to his God. In a spiritual view, this feeling of feeling is often lifted as echo of the origins of the human spirit. The human spirit actually have a natural tendency to return to God. But the life of the world often makes people complacent with various activities and desires, department property, pleasures, and various affairs of the world often makes humans more focused on things that are temporary, because it was on its way to Makrifat. Someone tries to clean his heart of things that cloaks the spirit's consciousness. To worship, remembrance, and repentance, the heart becomes clearer. When the heart starts to clear, one often feels a very deep sense of peace when remembering God. In a situation like this, as if the spirit begins to recall his closeness to God. This spiritual awareness does not mean human actually remember life before birth clearly, but more to feeling back a very deep inner connection with God, actual relationship has existed since the human spirit was created. Because it's when someone feels a strong longing to approach to God, when the heart feels very peace, when dhikr, or when the soul feels that the world unable to give true happiness. Maybe it's not just a normal feeling. It could be that it is call from the spirit who is recalling its origins that have been close to God. Before man is born, any of the world, heart longing to God. On the journey of life, there was a time when someone felt a very deep longing in his heart, but he himself does not always understand why the feeling arises. The world may look complete. Family, work, possessions, and various pleasures of the world could have. But there is still something in the soul that feels unfulfilled. There is a sense of emptiness that can't be easily explained. In a spiritual view, this feeling is often referred to as longing for God. This longing actually comes from the essence of the human spirit. The spirit was created by God and have a very close relationship with her. Before humans born into the world, the spirit was once in a very close state with God. When humans lived a life in the world, the relationship was often closed by the busyness and desire of the world. But in the depths of the human heart, traces of that closeness still remain. That's why sometimes people feel that the world is not fully capable of satisfying his heart. The world can give pleasure, but the fun is often temporary. After one wish is fulfilled, another desire arises. After one goal has been achieved, a new purpose arises. In a situation like this, one often begins to realize that the happiness of the world, not always able to, gives a really deep calm. At any given moment, longing for God can appear very strong. For example, when someone be in silence, when hearing the verses of the Quran, when seeing the beauty of God's creation, or when facing the test of life that makes him reflect on the meaning of life. In a moment like that, hearts often feel the urge to get closer to God, to pray, or to multiply worship. In a situation like this, one begins to feel that closeness to God brings serenity that the world cannot give. In the teachings of Sufism, longing for God, often taken as a sign that someone's heart still alive. A living heart is a heart that is still capable, feel the need to approach to God. On the contrary, a heart that is too immersed in the world often be loud and no longer feel the longing. This longing is also often the beginning of the journey, one's spiritual. Many people are beginning to search for the deeper meaning of life after feeling the emptiness in his heart. They begin to draw near to God, to worship, dhikr, and improve their lives. From that journey, someone slowly starts to feel peace deeper in his life. In the end, longing for God is something very natural in man, because in essence, the human spirit, it comes from God's creation and always had a tendency to go back to His. And maybe that's why, when someone really feel closeness to God, his heart found something he had been looking for. A tranquility that nothing in this world can give. World is a test place of the spirit. In the spiritual view of Islam, the life of the world is not the end of human existence. The world is just a temporary stopover, a place where humans go on short trips before returning to God. Human body live in the world, but the human spirit is undergoing a big test. The test will determine how does it return to its God. Since the human spirit is blown into the body, the life of the world began. This is where humans face a variety of options, temptations, and tests that come in many forms. There is a test of pleasure, wealth, and success. There's also a test of difficulty, loss, and suffering. It's all part of the journey of life. The actual aims to test the strength of faith and consciousness of the human spirit. The world often looks very attractive and alluring. There are many things in it that make people complacent about wealth, power of pleasure, and various things that make humans feel as if the world is everything. But in the view of the scholars of Sufism, all this is just a test of the human spirit. Whether humans will drown in the pleasures of the world to forget his God, or make the world a way to approach to God. Actually, the world wasn't created to be shunned completely, but also not to be the main purpose. The world is a place for humans to live their life, work to build a family, and do good. But behind all that activity, the human spirit is being tested. Does he still remember God, or just forget it? Often human, so busy chasing things in the world, to forget that this life will not last forever. The property collected, position achieved, and various world achievements, in the end will not be brought. When someone leaving the world, that will remain with humans is just charity, his deeds, and the state of his heart before God. On a spiritual journey, one starts to realize that the world is actually, it is a learning field for the human spirit. Every single incident in life contains lessons. Difficulty teaching patience. Favors teach gratitude. Loss teaches dependence to God. All life experiences are actually helping the human spirit grow and understand the true meaning of life. This awareness often arises when someone began to contemplate his life more deeply. He begins to understand that the world is not a place forever, but a place to prepare for a better life. Immortal. In a situation like this, someone start trying to live a wiser life, using the world without being fully bound by it. In the teachings of enlightenment, the world is often described as a short journey. For the human spirit, the spirit comes from God, taking a test in the world, and will eventually return to him. This journey determines whether the spirit returns in a clean and close state with God, or even in a state far from him. Because it's when someone begins to understand the nature of the world as a test ground, the way he looks at life will change. He is no longer too attached to things, while he began to focus more on fixing his heart, fix his charity, and strengthen his relationship with God. In the end, the world is only the way that the spirit of man must walk, not a place to live, eternal, and every step taken in the world is actually part of the journey of the spirit, heading back to his God. Heart as a door to remember God. In the spiritual journey of man, heart has a very important role. The liver is not just a physical organ in the body, but it is also the center of human inner consciousness. In many teachings of scholars and scholars of Sufism, heart is considered a place where people can feel closeness to God. The heart is often called a door to remember and know God. When humans were born into the world, his life is filled with activities and activities. The human mind is busy thinking about work, the necessities of life, social relations, and various other world affairs. This activity often makes humans more use his wits to understand the world. But a relationship with God can not only be perceived through reason, but also through the depths of the heart. Heart has a very subtle ability to feel things which cannot be explained by logic alone. When someone hears the verses of the Quran, for example, sometimes his heart suddenly feels touched. When a person dhikr to God, often his heart feels a very deep calm. Feelings like this arise not from the mind alone, but from a heart that begins to open, to remember God. In the teachings of Sufism, the human heart is often like a mirror. The mirror is clean, then it can reflect light very clearly. But if the mirror is covered by dust and dirt, light cannot be seen well, as well as the human heart. When hearts are filled with pride, the world's excessive desires, or various other vices, it is difficult for the heart to feel closeness to God. Instead, when the heart is cleansed through worship, remembrance of repentance, and good deeds, the heart becomes clearer. In a situation like this, someone began to feel the tranquility that comes from remembering God. He began to feel that dhikr bring a very deep peace, and worship brings happiness that cannot be found in the pleasures of the world. Because of that, a lot of scholars say that the journey to Makrifat actually is a journey to cleanse and open hearts. When the heart becomes clean and soft, someone began to feel a closer relationship with God. He becomes more easily touched by the truth. It is easier to feel the presence of God in your life, and it is easier to feel peace in worship. A living heart also makes someone more sensitive to the signs of God in his life. It becomes easier to be grateful when you get favors, and more patient when facing the test. All this happened because his heart is always trying to stay connected to God. In the end, the heart is the way that leads man to get back to know his God. When the heart is open, someone starts to realize true happiness does not come from the world, but from closeness to God. And from there, someone begins to understand that the true journey of life, not just body travel in the world, but also the journey of the heart, to always remember and back to God. Why there are people fast near with God. In life, we often see that everyone have a different spiritual journey. There are people who since childhood, or since the beginning of his life, feel so easy to get close to God. He feels comfortable with worship. His heart is easily touched when he hears the verses of the Quran, and his soul feels peaceful when dhikr or pray. But there are also people who take longer to find that closeness. This often raises questions. Why do people feel closer to God? In a spiritual view, one of the reasons is tenderness. Gentle caution is easier to accept the truth, and more easily moved by reminders of God. When someone have a soft heart, he is more sensitive to advice. It is easier to feel the presence of God in worship, and faster to feel calm when remembering it. On the contrary, a heart too filled with the busyness of the world, or by traits such as pride and hardness of ego, often takes longer to feel closeness to God. Other than that, environment and life experience also has a great influence. Someone who grew up in an environment which is full of faith values, they often hear about God, or who are accustomed to worship since childhood, it is usually easier to feel spiritual closeness. This kind of environment helps his heart opens faster to know and love God. There are also people who become closer to God after going through the tough tests of life, difficulty losing, or life-shaking experiences. Often makes a person begin to reflect on the meaning of his life. Under such circumstances, a person who finally found peace by coming back closer to God. The trials of life are often the way that makes the human heart to be more humble and more aware of the need for his God. In the teachings of Sufism, the scholars also explain that every human spirit have a level of different readiness in his spiritual journey. There is a faster spirit to feel closeness with God. because his heart is more exposed and better prepared to receive the light of faith. But this does not mean that others cannot achieve the same closeness. Every human being had the same opportunity to approach to God as long as he tries earnestly. The most important thing on this journey is a sincere desire to seek God. When someone has a strong intention to better himself, to cleanse his heart, and to get close to God, slowly he will feel a change in himself. His heart became calmer. Worship becomes more meaningful, and the life feels more peaceful. The journey to God is not a race between humans. Everyone has their own way and time. The most important thing is to keep trying to fix the heart, multiply, worship, and always ask God to be guided. Because at the end of the day, closeness to God is not just about how fast someone achieve it, but about how sincere someone walk towards it. And every little step, done with sincere intentions, will always carry a human heart getting closer to God. Makrifat, as the process of knowing God again. In the spiritual journey of Islam, enlightenment is often used to describe a very deep level of closeness between a slave with God. But enlightenment, not just ordinary knowledge of religion, or simply understand the teaching intellectually. Enlightenment is the recognition that is born from the depths of the heart, an inner awareness that makes a person really feel the presence of God in his life. In the view of the scholars of Sufism, Makrifat is often described as a process. Know God again. Why is it called getting to know? Because the human spirit is essentially have known God since before man, born into the world. As described in the Quran about the agreement of the spirit in the afterlife, the spirit of man has testified that God is his God, meaning at the deepest spiritual level. Humans actually have a relationship with God since the very beginning of its creation. But when humans are born into the world, a life full of various activities and temptations often makes humans forget the closeness. The human mind becomes preoccupied with the affairs of the world, desires, and various things that are temporary. Consequently, spiritual awareness of God becomes closed by various layers of the busyness of the world. Because it's a journey to Makrifat, actually, is a journey to cleanse the heart of the things that mask that consciousness. When someone multiply worship, remembrance, and repentance, his heart slowly became clearer. A clean heart becomes more sensitive to the presence of God, so that someone began to feel a very deep peace when remembering. In this process, someone began to see his life in a different way. He begins to understand that everything that happens in the world, it is in God's will. He sees the greatness of God in the universe, in the course of his life, even in every small event, what happens in his life. This realization made his heart even more submissive and getting closer to God. Enlightenment, too, makes someone feel that relationship with God. It doesn't just happen when you worship. Formally, he began to feel that God was always present in every second of his life. When he works, when he talks to someone else, when he faces difficulties, even when he enjoys the pleasures of life. Everyone, he felt part of a journey with God. In a situation like this, someone's heart be very peaceful. He no longer felt too tied to the things of the world that are temporary. He still lives the life of the world with full responsibility, but his heart does not sink in the world. His heart is always connected to God. The scholars of Sufism often say that Makrifat is not something that comes all of a sudden. It is fruit of the long drive in cleansing the heart. The more someone fixes herself, the closer he gets to God, and the more he felt the presence of God in his life. Because it Makrifat does not mean human discovered something completely new. Makrifat is the process of recalling. Actual relationship already exists between the human spirit, God from the beginning of creation. And when someone starts to feel Makrifat, it will realize that true happiness, not in the world, but on closeness of heart to God, who is always present in every step of his life. Death as back to God. For many people, death is often perceived as something terrifying, or as the end of life. But in the spiritual view of Islam, death is not the end of everything. Death is the return of the human spirit to God, the Creator, who have created it since the beginning of life. In the world is just a temporary journey, while death is the doorway to a life that more permanent. The human spirit, it comes from God's creation. Before humans born into the world, the spirit exists and has a relationship with God. When humans are born, spirit included into the body and live a life in the world. During life, humans face various tests, experiences, and journeys that shaped his life. But in the end, every human being will arrive at the same point: return to God. In the Quran mentioned that every soul will surely taste death. This verse reminds people that the life of the world is not something eternal. Human body one day will return to the ground, but the spirit returns to God who created it. Because it's in a spiritual view, death is not just a farewell to the world, but also a journey back to the origins of the human spirit. Awareness of death often makes someone started to see his life in a different. When someone understands that life in the world does not last forever, he began to realize that the time it has is precious. Every day is an opportunity to improve, multiply the good deeds, and bring the heart closer to God. On the way to enlightenment, death is often seen as a reminder about the purpose of human life. World is just a temporary travel place, while the real life be in the afterlife. When someone understands this, it's not too much anymore tied to the things of the world that are temporary. He still lives the life of the world with full responsibility, but his heart always remembers that one day it will return to God. The scholars of Sufism often say that the person who always remembers death will have a softer heart and wiser in living life, not easily caught up in the arrogance of the world. On the contrary, he tries to live life with awareness. That is, every act dipertanggungjawabkan before God. Death also reminds humans that the life of the world is just a small part of the spirit's journey. The spirit comes from God, living a life in the world, and will eventually return to him. For those who understand this truth, death is not something to be afraid of, but also a journey back to God, who created himself. This awareness, one begins to understand that the true purpose of life, not just living in the world, prepare to return to God with a clean heart and full of faith. Purpose of life is to recall Allah. In the course of human life, a lot of people ask about one very basic: what exactly purpose of human life in this world? Many people spend their lives chasing various things of treasure, status of success, and various world achievements. But after all that is achieved, often there are still feelings that this life has a deeper meaning than just chasing the pleasures of the world. In the spiritual view of Islam, purpose of human life actually very clear: knowing and remembering God. Human, created not just to live the life of the world, but also to build a close relationship with the Creator. World is just a temporary travel place, while the ultimate goal of man, it's back to God. Since the very beginning of its creation, the human spirit have a relationship with God. In the event of the covenant of the spirit in the realm of Azael, the entire human spirit once admitted that God is his God. But when humans, born into the world, the busyness of life often makes humans forget the relationship. A world full of things often makes humans focus on things that are temporary, because it was on its way to Makrifat. Purpose of human life. It is often described as the process of remembering God. Worship of remembrance, prayer, and various charities of goodness is the way to keep the human heart stay connected to God. When someone remembers God, his heart became calmer, and the life feels more meaningful. A lot of people sense that when they're closer to God, their lives feel more peaceful. Problems of life remain. Tests keep coming, but the heart feels stronger and more patient in facing it. This happens because the heart always remembers God. Have a calm that is not easy, shaken by the state of the world. On a spiritual journey, one also begins to understand that true happiness doesn't always come from worldly things. The world can give pleasure, but the fun is often temporary. When the heart feels close to God, one feels a much deeper peace from the pleasures of the world. This awareness slowly changes the way a person living his life. It keeps working, keep living its responsibilities in the world, but his heart is no longer completely tied to the world. He lives a life with awareness that everything that's owned is a gift from God, and one day, everything will come back to him. The scholars, Sufism, often says that the journey of human life is actually a journey back to Allah. The human spirit coming from God, living a life in the world, and will eventually return to him. During that trip, people have the opportunity to know God more deeply and fix himself, because it's the purpose of human life, not just to live and then die, but to live a life with the awareness, a higher spiritual, the realization that every step of life, it is part of the journey to God. And when one begins to understand the purpose of this life, he will realize that the happiness he has been looking for in the real world has been in his heart. The tranquility that is born from always remembering God. Hopefully what we reflect on in this discussion can be a reminder for all of us about the nature of self and purpose of our lives in the world. Sometimes humans, too busy chasing things in life, to forget that inside her, there is a spirit that comes from the creation of God. The spirit that will one day return to him. Life is not just about being born. Life and then leaving the world. Behind all that, there is a journey of the spirit who is looking for the way to get back close to his God. Every worship we do, every remembrance we say, and every good that we do is actually a small step to rekindle our relationship with God. May Allah soften our hearts, open our hearts to always remember, and guide our steps so as not to tied to a temporary world. May our lives be filled with the light of faith, peace of soul, and the realization that our true purpose in life. Return to God with a clean heart. If this discussion is useful, may it be an afterthought that brings us closer to God and makes us better understand the essence of the life we're living. Thank you for listening to the end. May Allah always guard our hearts, soothe our souls, and guide us to the path that is blessed. Wassalamu alaikum.